The Great Hall of the Galactic Convergence Council stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction. Its crystal walls caught the light from 12 different suns, each representing one of the member species that governed known space. Today, like every quarter cycle, the hall buzzed with the sounds of translation devices working overtime as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for their regular meeting. Council historian Zektar of the Velnari adjusted his ceremonial robes and approached the central speaking platform. His forearms moved in the traditional gestures of respect as he activated the holographic display system. Around him, representatives from 11 other species settled into their designated areas. The insectoid Kethmoran clustered together in their military formation. The gaseous ethereals floated in their containment spheres. The plant-like Verdani swayed gently in their soil pods. Honored delegates, Zektar began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced acoustics. Today we welcome the newest members to our alliance, the Copper Ridge Mining Collective. As is tradition, I will share with them the cautionary tales of our galactic history. The Copper Ridge delegates, small rocky beings who lived in asteroid belts, rolled forward eagerly. They had waited 300 cycles for acceptance into the council. Their excitement was obvious even through their environmental suits. Zektar's holographic display flickered to life, showing ancient star charts and faded records. Long ago, before our great alliance, the galaxy was a dangerous place. Many species rose and fell without trace. Some became legends, stories we tell to remember the importance of cooperation and wisdom. The first hologram showed a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. This was called Earth, home to a species known as humans. They appeared in our records approximately 2,000 cycles ago, during the Great Expansion period. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Great Expansion was not a happy time in galactic history. Many worlds had been lost to war and disaster. According to these ancient records, Zektar continued, humans were a bipedal species, similar, in some ways, to our Velnari cousins, but much more primitive. They claimed to possess remarkable abilities that, frankly, we must view as exaggeration or myth. The hologram changed to show crude drawings and data files. These records suggest that humans could survive in environments that would kill most intelligent life. They supposedly could run for days without stopping, survive in the vacuum of space for several minutes, and heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. Gentle laughter rippled through the hall. The idea seemed ridiculous to most delegates. But the most unbelievable claims, Zektar said with obvious amusement, concerned their behavior in warfare. The records suggest they never truly surrendered. Even when facing impossible odds, they would continue fighting. They supposedly formed emotional bonds not just with their own kind but with other species, treating aliens as family. Commander Thys of the Kethmoran Navy leaned forward in her seat. Unlike many of her species, she had spent time studying military history. Something about these records bothered her, though she could not say what. The humans vanished from all records about 200 cycles ago, Zektar explained. Most historians believe they simply destroyed themselves in one of their primitive wars. A few romantic scholars suggest they transcended physical existence, but this is clearly fantasy. The ethereal delegate pulsed with curiosity. Were there any verified contacts with this species? A few, Zektar admitted. The Trader Guild has some old records of commercial exchanges. The Kethmoran military archives mention brief encounters during the border wars. But these accounts are contradictory and unreliable. The humans were described as everything from savage warriors to peaceful explorers, to mysterious guardians who appeared when needed and vanished when the crisis passed. Commander Thys's mandibles clicked softly. She remembered those border war reports. Her grandfather had been there. He always claimed the human accounts were true, but the family had assumed his memory was failing. The point of this history lesson, Zektar concluded, is simple. The galaxy is full of mysteries and lost civilizations. We must not let ourselves become another cautionary tale. Through cooperation and wisdom, our council has brought peace and prosperity that has lasted for 500 cycles. As the formal session continued with trade reports and territorial agreements, Commander Thys found her attention wandering. Something nagged at her about the human records. During a break, she approached Zektar privately. "Historian, I request access to the complete human archives for military research purposes," she said. Zektar's eye stalks twisted in surprise. "Commander, those records are classified as historical curiosities. They have no military value." "Perhaps. But my grandfather served in the border wars. His reports mentioned human involvement. I would like to compare his accounts with the official records." "I'm afraid that's impossible. The Council declared those archives off-limits after several researchers became obsessed with human mythology. We cannot have our military officers chasing legends." Thais nodded respectfully, but her resolve hardened. If the archives were restricted, there had to be a reason beyond simple historical accuracy. As the council session wound down, none of the delegates noticed the subtle fluctuations in the station's long-range sensors. The monitoring systems registered brief energy spikes at the very edge of their detection range, but the automated systems classified them as background radiation from distant stellar phenomena. In the sensor control room, a junior technician named Blix observed the readings with mild interest. The patterns seemed almost rhythmic, like signals, but that was impossible. Nothing intelligent lived in the deep void between galaxies. "Probably just interference from the new quantum communication array," Blix muttered, filing the readings under routine maintenance reports. Meanwhile, Commander Thais returned to her quarters aboard the Kethmaran battlecruiser Iron Talon. As the ship's intelligence officer, she had access to military databases that civilian historians did not. If there were real records of human contact, they would be in the classified military archives. Her search began with her grandfather's service record. Colonel Thies had commanded a reconnaissance unit during the Battle of Kepler's Rest, one of the bloodiest engagements of the border wars. According to his reports, his unit had been surrounded by enemy forces when unknown ships appeared and drove off the attackers. The unknown ships were described as primitive in appearance but advanced in capability. Their crews had made brief contact, offering medical aid to wounded soldiers regardless of species. The report noted that these mysterious allies called themselves human and claimed to be just passing through. The official military conclusion had been that Colonel Thies's unit had been rescued by an unidentified third party, possibly pirates or mercenaries. But the description of the rescuers matched the ancient human records almost perfectly. Thies dug deeper into the archives. Over the past 2 centuries, there had been dozens of similar reports. Ships appearing from nowhere to assist vessels in distress. Mysterious figures helping evacuate colonies threatened by natural disasters. Always the same pattern. They appeared when needed, helped without asking for payment, and vanished before formal contact could be established. Most of these reports had been filed under unconfirmed encounters or sensor anomalies. But taken together, they painted a picture that made Thies's warrior instincts tingle with unease. If humans still existed, and if they possessed the capabilities described in the ancient records, they represented either the greatest ally or the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. As Iron Talon jumped to hyperspace for the journey home, its sensors detected another of those mysterious energy signatures. This one was stronger, closer, and definitely artificial. Something was watching them from the void between stars, and it had been watching for a very long time. Commander Thies stood in the command center of monitoring station Gamma 7, staring at displays that made no sense. The station was completely functional. Life support systems hummed quietly. Gravity generators maintained perfect Earth-normal conditions. Emergency lighting cast everything in a soft blue glow. But the station was empty. 43 crew members, reported Lieutenant Kex, consulting his scanner. All vanished without a trace. No signs of struggle, no emergency signals, no evacuation. Pods launched. Thies walked through the command center slowly, her forearms moving independently as she examined different control stations. Everything was in perfect order. Coffee still sat in cups, though it had long since grown cold. Personal items remained in place. Even the duty logs were up to date until exactly 72 hours ago. Then they simply stopped. "What does the Security footage show? She asked. That's the strange part, Commander. The footage shows normal operations until 0347 hours 3 days ago. Then every camera on the station goes dark simultaneously. When they come back online 6 hours later, the station is empty. This was the 4th monitoring station they had investigated in the past 2 weeks. All along the outer rim of Kethmaran space, deep space monitoring posts were going silent. The pattern was always the same. Crews vanishing, stations left undamaged, no explanation. Theis's investigation team consisted of her most trusted officers. She had not reported the pattern to high command yet because she suspected the truth would sound too much like the human legend Zektar had dismissed at the council meeting. Lieutenant examined the computer cores. Look for any data that might have been accessed or copied during those 6 dark hours. While Kex worked, Theis explored the station's lower levels. In the engineering section, she found something that made her mandibles click with surprise. Scratched into the metal wall beside the main power coupling were symbols. They looked crude, as if carved with a knife or sharp tool. But the letters were unmistakable. She had seen them in the restricted human archives. Commander. Kex's voice echoed through the station's communication system. You need to see this. I found something in the security backup files. Theis hurried back to the command center. Kex had managed to recover partial footage from a secondary security system that the attackers had apparently missed. The holographic display showed the station's main corridor during the 6-hour blackout period. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then shadows moved across the screen. Human-shaped figures in dark environmental suits moved through the corridors with impossible stealth. They seemed to know exactly where they were going. How many? Theis asked. I count at least 12. But Commander, watch how they move. The figures on the screen moved like no species Theis had ever seen. They coordinated perfectly without apparent communication. They seemed to anticipate each other's actions. When one paused to examine a door panel, another was already moving to cover the corridor behind them. They're not just coordinated, she realized aloud. They're thinking as a group while acting as individuals. The footage showed the figures accessing computer terminals throughout the station. They worked quickly and efficiently, as if they knew exactly what information they sought. Did they take anything? Theis asked. Data, yes. But they also left something behind. Kex highlighted several sections of the recovered footage. They left copies of files in the computer system, files that weren't there before. Theis studied the data. The files contained detailed information about Kethmaran military capabilities, ship movements, and defensive positions. But they also contained something else. Warnings about energy signatures detected beyond the galactic rim. These readings, she said slowly, they show massive objects approaching our galaxy. The data suggests they'll arrive within months, not years. Commander, there's more. I found similar warnings in the other station computers. Each one contains updated information about the approaching, whatever they are. Theis felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. Someone was trying to warn them about a threat they didn't even know existed. Someone who could infiltrate their most secure facilities without detection and leave behind intelligence that their own sensors couldn't gather. Over the next few days, reports filtered in from across the rim territories. Merchant vessels reported encounters with unknown ships. The descriptions varied, but certain details remained consistent. The mystery ships appeared primitive, almost crude in construction, but they moved in ways that defied physics and seemed to know things about galactic shipping routes that only the Navigation Guild should possess. Captain Vex of the merchant vessel Prophet's Dream submitted the most detailed report. His ship had suffered engine failure in deep space when an unknown vessel appeared and offered assistance. They fixed our hyperdrive in hours, Vex reported. Used techniques our engineers had never seen. When I asked who they were, the leader just said they were old friends of the galaxy and disappeared. The unknown ship had left behind a small device that enhanced Prophet's Dream's sensor array. The improved sensors detected energy signatures that standard equipment couldn't see. The readings showed dozens of similar unknown vessels moving through the void, always watching, always ready to help. But it was the final report that convinced Theis She was dealing with something beyond normal galactic politics. A survey team, studying an unstable star system, had been caught in a solar flare that should have killed them all. Their ship's shields failed, and their hull began to breach. Then the impossible happened. Figures in environmental suits appeared outside their ship in the vacuum of space. They moved without propulsion systems, simply floating through space as if it were air. They repaired the hull breach with their bare hands, using tools that seemed to reshape metal at the molecular level. The survey team's captain tried to communicate with the rescuers, but received only a brief message. The galaxy must survive. What's coming? We'll do our part. You do yours. Thais compiled all the reports and evidence into a classified file. The pattern was undeniable. Something was watching the galactic rim, protecting ships and stations from threats they didn't even know existed. The Watchers possessed technology that seemed impossible, and capabilities that matched the ancient human legends perfectly. But, if humans still existed, why hide? Why work in shadows instead of revealing themselves to the galaxy they seemed determined to protect? The answer came from an unexpected source. While reviewing the data files left at the monitoring stations, Thys discovered a message buried deep in the code. It was addressed to any military commander with the wisdom to look beyond official reports. The message was simple. The Devourers come. We remember the old promises. Trust will be required soon. Thais stared at the message for hours. The Devourers weren't in any galactic database, but the tone of the message suggested a threat beyond anything the current civilizations had faced. She made a decision that would change everything. Instead of reporting to high command, she began quietly contacting other military officers who had filed similar unexplained reports. If humans were real, and if they were trying to warn the galaxy about something called the Devourers, then someone needed to listen. The galaxy's myths were becoming reality, and reality was about to become far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Into the depths of space, far beyond the range of galactic sensors, ancient ships moved through the void. Their crews watched the growing panic on the rim worlds with patient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall across the cosmos. The time for hiding was almost over. The Nexus trade hub buzzed with activity as it always did. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds moved through its massive corridors, buying, selling, and negotiating deals that kept the galactic economy flowing. The station was neutral, ground, protected by treaties older than most civilizations and defended by weapons that could crack planets. So when the unknown ship requested docking permission, Station Administrator Quell assumed it was just another merchant vessel with faulty identification systems. Docking Bay 77 is cleared for your approach, Quell transmitted from the control center. Please transmit proper identification codes and manifest. The response came in perfect galactic standard, but the voice was strange. Too calm, too controlled. We carry no cargo for trade. We seek an audience with representatives of the Galactic Convergence Council. Our identification will be provided upon docking. Quell's tentacles writhed with annoyance. Important beings made appointments weeks in advance. They didn't just show up demanding meetings, but the ship's approach was flawless, showing the kind of piloting skill that suggested serious people aboard. Sir, reported sensor technician. Yep. I'm getting strange readings from that vessel. It appears primitive, but my scanners can't penetrate its hull. And, sir, it's generating no waste heat. That's impossible for any known propulsion system. Through the transparent aluminum viewing wall, Quell watched the mystery ship settle into the docking bay. It looked like nothing he had ever seen. The hull appeared to be made of some dull gray metal, welded together in rough patches. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes marked its design. It looked like something built by people who cared only about function. But it moved like poetry through space. Security team to Docking Bay 77, Quell ordered. Full diplomatic protocol, but stay alert. Chief of Security Koss led a team of 12 officers to meet the new arrivals. He had dealt with representatives from every known species, and most unknown ones. Whatever emerged from that ship, he could handle it. The ship's airlock opened with a soft hiss. Three figures stepped out, wearing environmental suits that looked as primitive as their vessel. The suits were bulky, made of what appeared to be metal and fabric rather than the advanced materials most spacefaring species used. But like the ship, something about them suggested hidden capabilities. "I am Chief Koss, head of station security," he announced. "State your business." The lead figure reached up and removed their helmet with practiced ease. What emerged made Koss's blood freeze in his veins. The face was unmistakably alien, yet hauntingly familiar. Two eyes, positioned forward like a predator's. Hair covering the top of the skull. Skin that looked fragile but somehow suggested durability. It was a face from the ancient archives, from myths and legends. It was human. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Reconnaissance Fleet," the figure said calmly. "We request immediate transport to the Galactic Convergence Council. We bring urgent information about threats to galactic security." Koss tried to activate his weapon, but the device refused to respond. Around him, his security team found their equipment similarly unresponsive. Not damaged or disabled, simply unwilling to function. "How?" Koss whispered. Captain Chen smiled, and the expression was both kind and terrifying. "We've had 2 centuries to study your technology. We know how to make it sleep when needed. Don't worry. Your weapons will work perfectly against any real threat. You're supposed to be extinct," Koss said. "Death is just another problem to solve," Chen replied. "We've gotten very good at solving problems." Within an hour, Nexus Hub was in controlled chaos. The news that humans had returned spread through unofficial channels like wildfire. Some called it a hoax, others whispered that the end times were coming. But in the depths of the station's most secure communication center, an emergency session of the Galactic Convergence Council was convening. Zektar materialized via hologram, his 4 arms gesturing wildly. "This is impossible. The humans are extinct. These must be imposters or descendants or—" "They're real," interrupted Commander Thess, who had arrived at Nexus Hub within hours of the first reports. "I've been tracking their activities for weeks. They've been protecting our rim territories from threats we didn't even know existed." The council chamber filled with the sound of arguing delegates. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for careful diplomatic contact. The ethereal representative pulsed with what might have been excitement or terror. Captain Chen and her 2 companions waited patiently in the center of the chamber. They seemed completely calm, despite being surrounded by some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Honored delegates," Chen said finally, and her voice somehow carried over the chaos without being raised. "You're debating the wrong questions." The chamber fell silent. "You want to know where we've been, why we disappeared, how we survived? Those are interesting questions, but they're not urgent ones. The urgent question is this: are you prepared to face extinction?" She gestured, and holographic displays filled the chamber. The images showed space itself seeming to writhe and twist. Stars flickered and died. Entire systems were consumed by something that defied description. "These are the Devourers," Chen explained. "They've consumed 17 galaxies that we know of. They strip away everything: matter, energy, even space-time itself. They learn, they adapt, and they never stop." The images showed massive biomechanical constructs that seemed to blend organic and artificial components. They moved through space like living creatures. But their technology was more advanced than anything the Council species possessed. "How long until they arrive?" asked the Keth Moran military representative. 6 days, Chen replied simply. The chamber erupted again. 6 days was impossible. Even the fastest ships needed weeks to cross galactic distances. "You don't understand," Chen continued. "The Devourers don't travel through space, they consume it. They're already here, eating the galaxy from the outside in. Your rim territories are already under attack, but your sensors can't detect them yet." She gestured again, and the displays showed real-time images of the galactic edge. To the Council's sensors, everything looked normal. But Chen's enhanced readings revealed the truth. The void between galaxies writhed with hostile life. "Where have humans been during all this?" demanded Zektar. Chen looked directly at him, and her eyes held depths that spoke of centuries beyond counting. We've been growing, learning, becoming what we needed to become to fight this war. What do you mean? Thais asked. We abandoned planetary existence 200 years ago, Chen explained. We spread throughout the galaxy, living in the deep void, watching, learning, protecting where we could. We studied every species, every technology, every possible advantage. We made ourselves into the guardians the galaxy needed, whether it wanted us or not. And now? Asked the ethereal delegate. Chen smiled again, and this time the expression was pure predator. Now we fight, but we can't do it alone. The Devourers have consumed civilizations far more advanced than any of yours. They've learned from each conquest. To defeat them, we need every ship, every weapon, every brilliant mind the galaxy can provide. What makes you think we can trust you? Zektar challenged. Chen's companions removed their helmets, revealing faces that represented different human ethnicities. One was tall and dark-skinned, the other shorter with Asian features. But both carried themselves with the same quiet confidence as their captain. Because, Chen said softly, we've been protecting you for 2 centuries without asking for anything in return. Because we could have conquered this galaxy easily if that had been our goal, and because in 6 days, trust will be the only thing standing between you and complete annihilation. The chamber fell silent again. Outside, long-range sensors finally began detecting the first signs of the approaching swarm. Reality was reshaping itself around the edges of known space. The time for legends was over. The time for survival had begun. We'll need a full military assessment of your capabilities, Thys said finally. Chen nodded. You'll have it. But Commander, you should know, we're not the same species that disappeared 200 years ago. We've evolved. We've become something new, something designed to fight horrors like the Devourers. What have you become? Thais asked. The thing that nightmares have nightmares about, Chen replied. And in 6 days, you'll be very glad we exist. The emergency session of the Galactic Convergence Council had been running for 18 hours straight. Representatives from every member species argued, planned, and desperately tried to prepare for something beyond their worst nightmares. The Idom Chamber's holographic displays showed the approaching Devourer swarm in terrifying detail. Commander Thys stood before the main tactical display, studying readings that made no sense. The swarm wasn't just approaching, it was rewriting the laws of physics as it moved. Space itself bent around the massive biomechanical entities, and stars dimmed as they passed. Fleet strength report, demanded General Korthak of the Velnari. Defense Force. Combined Council forces number approximately 50,000 vessels, Thys reported, ranging from patrol ships to dreadnoughts. But sir, based on the sensor data Captain Chen provided, our most powerful weapons may not even scratch these things. Captain Chen stood quietly beside the tactical display, studying the same data with eyes that had seen things the galaxy's finest military minds couldn't imagine. Her 2 companions had returned to their ship hours ago, preparing for something they called the Awakening. Captain, General Korthak addressed Chen directly. You claim humanity can fight these Devourers. Where is your fleet? Chen smiled, and Thys was beginning to recognize that expression. It meant something impossible was about to happen. Look around you, General, Chen said softly. The chamber's sensor displays began updating with new contact readings. At first, just a few dozen signals appeared at the edge of sensor range, then hundreds, then thousands. The readings multiplied exponentially, far beyond anything the sensors should have been able to detect. What are we seeing? Whispered Counselor Zektar. You're seeing us, Chen replied. The real us. Through the chamber's viewing ports, space itself seemed to shimmer. Then, as if reality was slowly adjusting its focus, ships became visible. Not just ships, an armada beyond comprehension. Vessels of every size and configuration filled the void between stars. Some were kilometer-long behemoths that dwarfed the largest council dreadnoughts. Others were tiny fighter craft that moved like living creatures through space. Commander Theus stared in amazement as her sensors registered impossibility after impossibility. A ship the size of a small moon hung in the distance, its surface covered with what looked like a living forest. Nearby, a fleet of crystalline vessels pulsed with internal light, their hulls growing and reshaping themselves as she watched. "How many?" she whispered. "Current count is approaching 2 million vessels," Chen said calmly. "But the number changes, constantly. We build new ships as we need them." "Where were they?" General Korthak demanded. "Our sensors detected nothing." "They were everywhere," Chen explained. "Hidden in asteroid fields, cloaked in nebulae, sleeping in the deep void between systems. We've been here all along, watching, waiting, preparing for this day." A new signal appeared on the tactical display, something massive approaching from the Galactic Rim. The Devourer advanced scouts had arrived. The first contact was devastating. The scout entity, a biomechanical construct the size of a battle station, emerged from hyperspace near the outer system of Kepler's Hope. Within minutes, it began consuming everything in its path. Planets dissolved into component atoms. The system star flickered and began to dim. "All Council forces engage immediately," General Korthak ordered. A combined fleet of 300 vessels converged on the scout. They unleashed everything they had: antimatter torpedoes, plasma cannons, gravitational disruptors. The weapons struck their target and simply vanished, absorbed into the creature's hull without causing any visible damage. Then the scout returned fire. A wave of energy swept outward from the creature, and dozens of council ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, erased, as if they had never been built. The surviving vessels retreated in panic. "Conventional weapons are useless," Theus reported, her voice steady despite the horror she was witnessing. "That thing just deleted 67 ships from reality." "Captain Chen," General Korthak said urgently, "if your people can fight these things, now would be an excellent time to demonstrate." Chen activated her communication device. "All units, you are clear to engage. Show them what we've become." What happened next redefined Theis's understanding of warfare. The human ships moved unlike anything she had ever seen. They didn't follow predictable flight patterns or maintain formation discipline. Instead, they flowed through space like schools of fish, each vessel independent yet perfectly coordinated with the whole. A human fighter, no larger than a council patrol ship, approached the massive scout. Instead of attacking from range, it flew directly at the creature's hull. At the moment of impact, the fighter seemed to merge with the enemy vessel. Then the scout began to change. Sections of its biomechanical hull started shifting color and texture. Weapon emplacements that had been firing moments before went dark. The creature's coordinated movement became erratic, as if something was fighting for control of its systems. "What are they doing?" Theus asked. "Conversion," Chen replied. "We don't just destroy our enemies. We make them into allies, more human." Ships engaged the scout using similar tactics. They didn't fight the creature, they infected it. Within an hour, the massive entity had stopped attacking council forces and begun systematically dismantling itself, its raw materials floating, free for the human ships to collect and repurpose. "Impressive," General Korthak admitted. "But that was just a scout. The main swarm will have adapted to your tactics by the time it arrives." "Then we'll adapt our adaptations," Chen said simply. "That's what we do." The main Devourer swarm arrived 3 days early, emerging from hyperspace in a coordinated assault that spanned dozens of star systems simultaneously. The entities were larger and more sophisticated than the scout, and they had indeed adapted to human conversion tactics. But humanity had adapted too. Commander Theus found herself assigned to a joint human council task force, commanding from the bridge of her own vessel, while coordinating with human ships that defied every principle of naval architecture she knew. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Kex, struggled to track vessels that seemed to phase in and out of existence. "Commander, the human ship Endurance is requesting permission to dock with us," Kex reported. "Dock? We're in the middle of a battle. They say they want to upgrade our weapons. Minutes later, Thais watched in fascination as human technicians swarmed through her ship's weapon systems. They worked with tools that seemed to reshape matter at the molecular level, integrating alien technology with Kethmoran engineering in ways that should have been impossible. Your plasma cannons are now hybrid biomechanical systems, explained the human engineer, a woman who looked no older than 20 but spoke with the authority of centuries. They'll adapt to whatever defensive measures the enemy uses. The more you fight, the more effective they become. How is that possible? Thais asked. We learned from the Devourers themselves, the engineer replied. Every technique they use, against us we study and improve. We've been fighting them across 17 galaxies. Each time we get better. The enhanced weapons prove their worth immediately. Where before This's ship had been limited to hit-and-run attacks, now she could engage Devour entities directly. Her plasma cannons evolved with each shot, finding new ways to penetrate enemy defenses. But it was the human ships themselves that truly amazed her. She watched a human vessel half the size of her own engage a Devourer construct 10 times larger. The human ship began to replicate itself mid-battle, spawning smaller versions that attacked from multiple angles. When the enemy adapted to the swarm tactics, the small ships merged back together into a configuration the Devourers had never seen before. They're not just using technology, Thais realized. They've become technology. The battle raged across the galaxy's edge, with human and council forces working together against an enemy that consumed worlds for breakfast. And slowly, impossibly, they began to win. But even as the tide turned, Thys could see that this was only the beginning. The main Devourer force was still approaching, bringing horrors that would make the current battle look like a minor skirmish. The real test was yet to come. The galaxy burned with the light of 1,000 battles. Across 50 star systems, the combined forces of humanity and the Galactic Council fought desperately against the main Devourer swarm. Space itself twisted and writhed as reality-consuming. Entities clashed with ships that defied every known law of physics. Commander Thys stood on the bridge of her upgraded vessel, watching displays that showed battles on a scale no military academy had ever prepared her for. Her ship's new biomechanical weapons had evolved 17 times during the fighting, each iteration more effective than the last. But even with human technology augmenting her capabilities, the enemy seemed endless. Status report, she ordered. We've destroyed or converted 43 Devourer entities in this sector, Lieutenant Kex reported. But long-range sensors show hundreds more approaching. And Commander, some of them are the size of moons. Through the main viewing screen, Thys could see the human fleet in action. Ships that had been one configuration minutes ago were now completely different designs. A human dreadnought split into 1,000 smaller vessels, each one attacking a different target. When the Devourers adapted anti-swarm defenses, the small ships merged into 3 massive constructs that the enemy had never encountered before. How do they coordinate all this? Kex wondered aloud. Captain Chen's voice came through the communication system as if she had heard the question. We think together while acting individually. 2 centuries of evolution taught us that the line between self and species is just another barrier to overcome. A massive Devourer construct, larger than anything they had faced so far, emerged from hyperspace directly ahead of their fleet. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with absorbed starlight, and weapon systems that had consumed the military technology of a dozen civilizations tracked toward the Allied fleet. All ships concentrate fire on the primary target, General Korthak ordered from his command vessel. The combined firepower of 300 council ships struck the creature simultaneously. The massive entity absorbed every shot, its hull actually growing larger and more complex as it processed the incoming energy. Then, it fired back. The return blast deleted an entire squadron from existence, not destroyed, simply erased from reality as if they had never existed. Thys felt her crew's terror through the shared consciousness that human technology had made possible. We can't fight that thing, someone whispered over the communication channel. Yes, we can, Chen's voice replied calmly. But not the way you're thinking. A single human ship barely larger than a fighter, approached the massive devourer. Thais recognized the vessel. It was Chen's personal craft, the same primitive-looking ship that had first docked at Nexus Hub. "Captain, what are you doing?" Thais transmitted. "Something we should have tried before we lost 17 galaxies," Chen replied. "I'm going to talk to it." The human ship approached the devourer construct without raising shields or charging weapons. As it drew closer, something extraordinary happened. The creature's weapon systems powered down. Its aggressive posture shifted to something that might have been curiosity. "All units, hold position," Chen ordered. "Do not fire unless I give the word." Through her upgraded sensors, Thais watched Chen's ship make contact with the devourer entity. Not physical contact, something deeper. The biomechanical construct began to change, its hostile configurations shifting to more neutral forms. "She's communicating with it," Thais whispered in amazement. "Not just communicating," Chen's voice came through clearly despite the impossible distance. "I'm talking to the intelligence behind the swarm, the consciousness that drives the devourers across the cosmos." What Chen discovered in those moments of contact changed everything. The devourers weren't evil. They were desperate. Their original galaxy had been consumed by an even greater threat, a cosmic force that ate reality itself. The biomechanical swarm was the last survivors of countless civilizations, merged together in a desperate attempt to outrun annihilation. They consumed other galaxies not from malice, but from necessity. They needed the raw materials and energy to keep fleeing from something that could not be fought or reasoned with. Every world they devoured gave them a few more years of existence before the ultimate darkness caught up with them. "What are you saying?" General Korthak demanded. "I'm saying they're refugees," Chen replied, "and I'm offering them something better than endless flight." Through the communication link, Thais heard Chen speaking to the devourer intelligence in concepts that transcended language. She offered symbiosis instead of consumption, cooperation instead of conquest, the combined knowledge and resources of two galaxies working together to find a solution to the cosmic threat. The devourer entity began to transform. Its aggressive biomechanical configurations shifted to peaceful forms. Weapon systems became manufacturing facilities. Consumption apparatus became construction tools. "The swarm is standing down," reported sensors operators across the fleet. But the transformation went deeper than mere cessation of hostilities. Human ships began approaching the devourer constructs, not to attack, but to merge. The biomechanical entities welcomed them, incorporating human technology and consciousness into their collective existence. "They're joining together," Thais observed in wonder. "Not joining," Chen corrected. "Evolving, becoming something new. Something that can face the darkness beyond the galaxies." Over the following hours, Thais witnessed the birth of a new form of life. Humans, devourers, and even some council species began merging their technologies and consciousness into hybrid entities that possessed capabilities none of them could achieve alone. Some beings chose to remain in their original forms, maintaining their individual identities while contributing to the greater whole. Others embraced complete transformation, becoming something that was simultaneously all species and none of them. The process was voluntary, guided by principles that Chen called the old promises, agreements made between humanity and consciousness, itself during their centuries of evolution in the void. "What happens now?" Thais asked as the immediate crisis ended. Chen's ship approached, but the woman who emerged was changed. She still looked human, but something deeper had shifted. Her eyes held depths that reflected the combined knowledge of multiple galaxies. "Now we prepare," she said simply. "The force that drove the devourers from their home is still out there. It consumes not just matter and energy, but existence itself, and it's heading this way." "How long do we have?" General Korthak asked. "Perhaps 1,000 years," Chen replied. "Long enough to prepare if we work together. Long enough to become something that can stand against the ultimate darkness." The transformation of galactic civilization began immediately. Human technology merged with council engineering and devourer biomechanics to create capabilities that none of them could have imagined alone. Worlds became living entities. Ships evolved consciousness. The boundary between biology and technology disappeared entirely. But through it all, the core nature of each species remained intact. Humans retained their adaptability and persistence. The council species kept their diverse perspectives and specialized knowledge. The former devourers contributed their experience with cosmic-scale threats. This found herself commanding not just a ship, but a living entity that was simultaneously vessel, crew, and consciousness. The experience was overwhelming at first, but gradually she learned to think in the new patterns that evolution demanded. "Will we be strong enough?" she asked Chen during one of their planning sessions. Chen looked out at the transformed galaxy, where hybrid entities constructed defenses that spanned solar systems and developed technologies that could reshape reality itself. "I don't know," she admitted. "But for the first time in millions of years, the universe has a chance. And sometimes that's all legends can offer, a chance for something better." The galaxy settled into its new configuration, preparing for a war that would determine whether consciousness itself could survive in a universe that seemed bent on consuming everything that existed. But they would face that war together, as something new and unprecedented in cosmic history. The Age of Legends was over. The age of survival had begun, and in the depths of space, ancient eyes watched with approval as the galaxy's children took their first steps toward becoming something that could face the darkness without flinching. The real story was just beginning.